Because we're big dual sport fans, it didn't go unnoticed for even a second that the new Husqvarna's 2014 model lineup lacked a street-legal dual-purpose machine along the lines of sibling company KTM's 350-500X. So we were stoked to see two such models announced for 2015, the Fray 501S and Fray 350S. Critics may cite the fact that these two machines are very similar in design to the existing KTM's, even sharing identical engines, but there are enough differences to keep them from being called carbon copies. And besides, even if they were just yellow and blue KTM's, we like the X so much, you wouldn't hear a complaint from us. So what distinguishes these bikes from their orange counterparts? Amongst the key differences are the chassis components. For starters, the Husky's double cradle chrome moly frames are unique to these two bikes, while high-tech composite polyamide subframes are designed to give the frame a bit more wanted flex for better ride quality. But the biggest distinction is the suspension. Both FEs come equipped with WP's linked dual compression control shock in contrast to KTM's linkless PDS systems on the 350-500X. Up front, a sophisticated WP4CS 4-chamber closed cartridge fork allows compression and rebound adjustment via tool-free clickers on the top of the fork caps, and is supposed to offer better performance than the 350-500X's open cartridge design. Keeping the front ends stiff are CNC machined triple clamps that allow the handlebars to be set in 4 different positions. Getting to ride both the Fray 350S and Fray 501S back-to-back on the same day at the press launch really helped distinguish each bike's engine characteristics from one another. Like the KTM's, these two engines are very different in design. The smaller machine uses a 350cc mill with a dock, 4-valve cylinder head utilizing titanium intakes and DLC-coated finger followers. Bore and stroke measure 88.0 x 57.5 mm, while a slightly heavier Pankel crankshaft is utilized compared to the pure off-road Fray 350 for better traction. Its big brother displaces 510cc with 95.0 x 72.0 mm bore and stroke dimensions, but the key difference is the use of a single cam. Titanium intake valves are controlled by a DLC-coated intake rocker arm. Both bikes have wide ratio 6-speed gearboxes. We started our day at the company's headquarters in Merida, California, and promptly headed for the hills and the dirt. I started the day on the 350 and was promptly reminded how entertaining this engine is. The twin-cam design is snappy and lively, especially higher up in the rev range, providing a more pronounced hit than its bigger single-cam brother. Bottom-end grunt is good, but the 350 definitely required a more toe work on the shifter than the big 500. On tighter, rocky, rutted sections of Jeep Road, I found myself shifting back and forth between second and third gears quite a lot. But when the trail opened up, it was a blast to crack that 42mm key-in throttle body foe and let it eat. It feels more akin to an XR than an off-roader or dual sport machine. And top-end power doesn't feel much different than the 500s, either. Fueling from the 350 was excellent, with the bike only flaming out on me one time all day. Stalls aren't much of an issue, anyway, because of electric starting. There is a kickstart setup available as an accessory, but it isn't standard. After getting comfortable on the 350, I traded up to the 501. It took me a little bit of time to get used to riding the bigger bike. It's perfectly happy being revved and wrung out like the smaller engine, but once I began to take advantage of its luggable nature due to its massive bottom-end torque, it was a much more enjoyable to ride. On the 501, I stuck it in third gear and chugged up anything we encountered all day. Silt and sand weren't even a challenge. When I really wanted to get my heart racing, I'd just keep the throttle pinned a bit longer and let things get hectic. The big difference between the two engines is that the 501 always has power, so it never has that big hit that instantly breaks the rear tire loose. The big engine delivers its torque in a smoother manner, so when the tire breaks loose it is more progressive, making throttle control easier. For that reason alone, the 501 is a bit more relaxing to ride, but the fact that you can short shift it and carry a taller gear most of the time keeps the chassis from feeling so wound up, too. Although the spec sheet doesn't tell the tale, the two bikes handle and feel different on the trail. For starters, the 350 weighs a claimed 8 pounds and 50 pence less than the 501, which isn't an insignificant amount. Where this weight is most noticeable is getting the bike stopped heading into tight corners. But it's also evident when combined with the reduced rotational inertia from the smaller engine, the 350 is flickable and easier to maneuver. Beyond those few differences, each chassis felt very similar in terms of braking and suspension performance compared to each other. Braking performance from the Brembo's front and rear were excellent, with lots of bite and good modulation on tricky surfaces. But what really stood out to me was the performance of the 48mm 4CS forks and linked shocks. On one very long Jeep road in particular, both ends were put to the test by the rough and rocky square-edged bumps that littered the trail. I thought the front end did a great job of sucking up the hits without deflecting and also keeping the bike pointed in my desired direction. The same can be said for the rear. The rising rate linked shock is less prone to aggressively kicking sideways through fast chop and over unexpected rocks than KTM's PDS. I was happy enough with the base setup. I didn't touch a clicker on either bike all day. If there is one thing that stands out to criticize, it has to be the seats. Husky either really wants riders to work on their form and stand up more, or it's some kind of sadistic joke. By the end of our 120-mile ride my butt was hammered. And I ride a bicycle 100 miles a week. Another nice addition would be higher quality folding mirrors. We would just throw a pair of doubly takes on there and call it a day. Outside of those minor complaints, these two bikes, like their orange cousins, represent the pinnacle of dual sport performance. With multiple players in this arena again, we've rounded up the three key players in the 500cc class, Beta, Husky and KTM, and we'll be doing a comparison test soon. We have no doubt that Husky is instantly on even ground with KTM in this segment. This current marriage between the two companies is exactly what Husqvarna needed to spark a true resurgence that the previous Italian and German owners were never able to execute. If you are looking for a hardcore dual sport machine, Husqvarna has to be on your short list of options.